In honor of Halloween, here are some morbid facts about your favorite horror movies. Shelley Duvall said the amount of emotional trauma from filming The Shining was unbearable and excruciating. She was genuinely terrified while on set and often pulled clumps of her hair out in between takes. Due to the stress and torment that director Stanley Kubrick put her through, Shelley had a complete mental breakdown after the movie was filmed. The set of Texas Chainsaw Massacre was filled with 500 pounds of rotting animal corpses. The stench mixed with the heat caused actors to vomit constantly. The director said that by the last few days of filming, every time he yelled cut, the actors and crew would immediately puke. A group of psychologists studied 400 movies to find the most realistic psychopath, and the winner was Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men. They said that he seems to be effectively invulnerable and resistant to any form of humanity or emotion. Popular characters Hannibal Lecter and Patrick Bateman didn't even make it in the top 25. Morbid facts about horror movies. After filming Psycho, actress Janet Leigh was so terrified of showers that she only took baths for 35 straight years. On the extremely rare occasion that she did take a shower, she made sure that every door in the house was locked and left the shower curtain open. While filming for Resident Evil 5, there was an accident on set that left 16 people injured. Their zombie costumes were so gory that first responders on the scene had a very difficult time assessing the injuries. The woman who voiced the demon Pazuzu in the original Exorcist had a son who murdered his whole family before turning the gun on himself. He did all of this while wearing a Freddy Krueger mask. Speaking of The Exorcist, one of the actors in the film went on to become an actual serial killer. Paul Bateson, who plays a nurse in the film, eventually confessed to the killing and dismembering of 6 gay men throughout the 1970s. But he was released on parole in 2004 after serving only 5 years in prison. Morbid facts about horror movies. Real skeletons were used while filming the first Poltergeist because it was cheaper than making prop ones at the time. The woman who acted in this creepy scene wasn't told they were real until after the shooting was finished. Many people believe that using these real skeletons caused the set to become cursed. For example, while filming the creepy clown doll scene, the doll nearly killed Robbie Freeling when an animatronic error caused his arm to quickly tighten around the boy's neck. When the young actor started gesturing that he couldn't breathe, Steven Spielberg thought it was just really good acting. While his life was spared, multiple actors from the movie series weren't so lucky. Dominique Dunne, who played the older sister in the first film, was murdered by her ex-boyfriend right after the movie premiered. In 1988, the little girl who played Carol Ann died of cardiac arrest at the young age of 12. The actor who played the evil preacher in Poltergeist 2 died of stomach cancer just after they finished filming. And the actor who played the Native American shaman died soon afterwards during a heart-lung transplant. In 1980, Australian man Kevin Hillier was told by his doctor to take up metal detecting for exercise to strengthen his back. Within just a few weeks of this newfound hobby, he stumbled upon a golden nugget that took more than 2 hours to dig out. Weighing over 60 pounds, the Hand of Faith ended up being one of the largest gold nuggets ever found, worth just under $2 million. In 1851, British inventor Colin Pollinger built a mousetrap that he claimed would work for centuries. 155 years later, the trap somehow managed to catch a mouse while on display in a museum. During World War I, Belgian soldier Optatius Bizens was carrying these coins in his pocket when he was shot. Miraculously, they acted as a shield against the bullet and likely saved his life. Donald Harvey was a nurse from Ohio who killed 37 of his patients with cyanide throughout the 70s and 80s. He was only caught when one of his victims' coroners had the rare genetic ability to smell cyanide. This prompted an investigation and Harvey was exposed as a serial killer. A Thai man named Jumrus Theakot was barely surviving as a fisherman, making only about $13 a day. But one day in 2019, he was walking along the beach and found a strange yellow lump in the sand. He decided to take it home for good luck, and it ended up being 80% ambergris, a super rare substance made from the waxy vomit of a sperm whale. He ended up selling it for a whopping $470,000. In 2013, ABC News reporter Amy Rohrbach had a mammogram taken live on TV to promote breast cancer awareness. It just so happened that she did have breast cancer, and the procedure likely saved her life. Despite being founded the same year in the same city with the same name, Hershey's Chocolate and Hershey's Ice Cream have no affiliation and have actually had multiple legal battles over their shared name. Nikola Tesla was born at midnight on July 10th during a severe thunderstorm. The midwife declared the lightning a bad omen and said he would be a child of darkness. But his mother replied saying, "No, he will be a child of light." 70 years ago, the United States learned about Joseph Stalin's death when a 21-year-old Air Force staff sergeant intercepted a coded message from Russia. That sergeant was none other than singer-songwriter Johnny Cash. In 2013, Margaret Arobio bought a Powerball ticket with random numbers and won the $360 million jackpot, or so she thought. The next day, she saw a media report claiming that nobody had won the jackpot yet. When she called the place where she bought the ticket from, they told her that she bought it an hour after the numbers were drawn. In 1998, Honduras built a bridge over the Choluteca River, but the water was rerouted by Hurricane Mitch that same year. On December 31st, little Delaney turned 1 year old while her great-great-grandmother turned 101. They were born exactly a century apart. There was only one photo ever taken of Abraham Lincoln giving a speech, and his killer John Wilkes Booth can be found in it. In 2016, Glenda Blackwell bought a $10 scratch-off ticket to prove to her husband that they were a total waste of money. But she failed to prove her point since the ticket ended up being a $1 million jackpot winner. Sodium nitrate is the secret ingredient that will turn any cheese into a creamy nacho cheese sauce. By pure coincidence, sodium nitrate's chemical formula spells out the word nacho. A Bosnian couple began cheating on each other when they both started talking to another person online. When they decided to meet in person, the couple realized they'd been cheating on each other with each other. While randomly watching Stuart Little with his daughter in 2009, a Hungarian art historian spotted a famous long-lost painting that was used as a prop. Sleeping Lady with a Black Vase had been missing since 1928 until a Stuart Little set designer picked it up at an antique shop for $500. The historian contacted producers to alert them of its value, and the painting later sold at auction for more than $300K. In 2019, an Australian man was walking his dog named Lucky when he accidentally kicked something hard that he thought was dog poop. But upon picking it up, he quickly realized it was actually a gold nugget worth right around $35,000. Someone took a pic of an albino peacock at the exact time that it flew over a regular one, making it look like its spirit was exiting its body. The original patent for the fire hydrant was destroyed in a fire when the U.S. Patent Office burned to the ground in 1836. Thus, the true inventor of the fire hydrant remains a mystery. In 2017, a group of undercover cops in Detroit who were posing as drug dealers tried to arrest another group of undercover cops who were posing as drug buyers. Packers fan Jim Becker regularly donated blood in order to afford tickets for games. Years later, he found out that he had a potentially deadly disease that could only be prevented through bloodletting. So without even knowing it, he was saving his own life by donating blood the entire time. A Chinese couple recently discovered that they were in the same photograph as teenagers, more than a decade before they'd ever met. In 2015, a man found a Mountain Dew bottle from 1992 that would have won him a brand new Super Nintendo. Jim Springer and Jim Lewis are identical twins who were separated at birth but ended up living nearly identical lives. Both married a woman named Linda, got divorced, and remarried a woman named Betty. They also both drove a Chevy, smoked Salem cigarettes, and had a dog named Toy. All of this was discovered when they were reunited at the age of 39. In 2013, a New York family bought a $3 bowl at a garage sale and displayed it on their mantle for years. They eventually decided to get it checked out, and it ended up being a 1,000-year-old Chinese ding bowl worth $2.2 million. The only other bowl of its kind in the world had been in a British museum for over 60 years. A man was photographing a plane crossing over a rainbow when it was struck by lightning at the exact same time. In 1903, a pair of identical strangers named Will West and William West ended up in the same Kansas prison. The case was a big part of the reason why fingerprints are now used for identification. In 2009, a teacher was kidnapped in Mexico immediately after giving a lecture on how not to be kidnapped in Mexico. In 1999, skydiver Joan Murray's parachute malfunctioned, causing her to fall 14,000 feet to the ground. But miraculously, she landed directly on a mound of fire ants which began attacking her relentlessly. Doctors think the shock of adrenaline from 200 fire ant stings is what kept her heart beating and saved her life. David Hull was digging for gold in 2015 when he came across a rock that he was certain had gold inside. But after years of failing to crack the rock open, he finally decided to take it to an expert, and it ended up being something much more rare than gold. Turns out it was an iron meteorite estimated to be 4.6 billion years old. Narnia the Two-Faced Cat recently gave birth to 2 kittens of each color. Tom Cruise divorced all 3 of his ex-wives when they turned 33, and each is 11 years younger than the last. In 1981, a South African astronomer gave a lecture on how death could happen at any time. At the end of the lecture, he popped a peppermint candy into his mouth and promptly choked to death. In 2012, a beachcomber in Canada came across an old Harley-Davidson that washed ashore. The bike was lost in the 2011 Japanese tsunami and had somehow managed to float all the way across the Pacific Ocean. The Secret Service agent who saved Ronald Reagan's life was inspired to become an agent after watching The Secret Service, a 1939 film starring Ronald Reagan as a Secret Service agent. On July 4, 1826, President John Adams' last words before dying were, "Thomas Jefferson survives." Little did he know, President Jefferson had died just hours earlier on that same day. Not to mention, it was exactly 50 years after the Declaration of Independence was passed. In the year 2000, Rick Norsegian was looking for a barber chair at a California garage sale but ended up purchasing 2 boxes of old photos for $45. 4 years later, he discovered that the boxes contained 65 glass plate negatives from legendary photographer Ansel Adams, worth right around $200 million. This ship's crew raised its anchor only to realize it was hooked on an unexploded torpedo. In 2020, a fan drove 3 hours to deliver a much-needed dose of insulin to rapper Boozy Badass. He wanted to compensate her, but she refused to take any payment other than a photo with him. On her way home, she stopped at a gas station, bought a scratch-off ticket, and won $10,000. In 1949, 12-year-old Charles Cohen hid inside of a closet while a mass murderer shot and killed his entire family. Nearly 70 years later, his granddaughter would survive the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting by hiding in a closet. When a group of loggers were cutting off the top of a chestnut oak tree in 1980, they found the mummified remains of a hunting dog. Experts believe that it chased its prey up the tree in the 1960s, only to get stuck there and eventually die. He was posthumously named Stucky. This endangered baby dolphin in Argentina died shortly after this photo was taken because beachgoers were passing it around for selfies. If you hit someone with your car in China, you have to pay for their medical care. But if you kill someone with your car in China, you only have to pay a one-time fine. For this reason, many Chinese drivers have gone back to kill the person they hit. The reason you wake up right before you're about to die in a dream is because your brain doesn't know what it's actually like to experience death. Dutchman Richard Kinklamer's wife mysteriously disappeared in 1991. The next year, he wrote a book on 7 ways to kill your spouse. A few years later, the new owners of his former home found his wife's skeletal remains. He was later sentenced to 7 years in prison for his wife's murder, but was released 5 years early for good behavior. In 2018, 17-year-old Jordan Turpin ran away from home and called 911 to report that she and her 12 siblings were being abused by their parents. But what police found in the Turpin household was far more horrific than anything they'd ever seen before. The entire house reeked of human excrement, decaying garbage, and dead pets that were scattered throughout the home. Many of the 12 kids had been tied to their beds and were covered in bruises and dirt. It was immediately clear that David and Louise Turpin had been torturing their children for years, allowing them to eat just once per day and shower just once per year. They would reportedly often leave food on the table and force their kids to stare at it before throwing it away in the trash. This resulted in extreme malnourishment as their oldest son was 29 years old but weighed just 82 pounds at the time of their rescue. The children were so clearly abused that a few doctors and nurses broke down in tears upon seeing them for the first time. Many of them lacked basic knowledge of the world, not even knowing what medicine or the police were. The Turpin parents were handed 12 counts of torture among numerous other charges and were effectively sentenced to life in prison. Earlier this week, New York State officials raided the home of social media star Peanut the Squirrel and seized him from their owners before tragically euthanizing their beloved pet. Peanut was a rescue squirrel who was taken in more than 7 years ago by animal refuge owner Mark Longo. Having lost half its tail in a severe attack, Peanut wasn't adept enough to survive in the wild, so Longo decided to care for the squirrel in his home, eventually turning him into an adorable online sensation. According to reports, the state's DEC received multiple anonymous complaints about Peanut before showing up to Longo's home with at least 6 officers to confiscate the pet along with their rescue raccoon named Fred. The scumbag DEC claim that it's illegal to keep young wildlife as pets since they're not well suited for life in captivity and may carry viruses. Upon hearing about Peanut and Fred's deaths, Longo tearfully posted that he was in deep shock and grief since Peanut was the best thing that ever happened to us. This was the last photo taken of Marie Joseph before she drowned in the public swimming pool that's shown. Due to the murky water, her body wasn't found for 2 entire days, during which time people continued swimming in the pool completely unaware that Marie's body was decomposing beneath them. There's a Mickey Mouse comic strip from 1930 in which Minnie leaves Mickey for another mouse. Venezuelan serial killer Durangel Vargas confessed to killing and eating at least 10 people, but he claimed he never ate fat people because they have too much cholesterol. In 1997, episode 38 of the Pokemon anime aired just one time before being pulled from TV forever. The episode featured a flashing strobe effect that sent nearly 700 children to the hospital with nausea and seizures. The incident nearly single-handedly ruined the franchise, and the Pokemon Porygon was banned from ever appearing in an episode again. Since 1982, a group of researchers have been going deeper and deeper into the Veryovkina Cave, the deepest cave in the world. At 3,000 feet deep in 2021, they found the body of a climber dangling from a rope. George Washington died because his doctors tried to cure his sore throat by draining his blood. He lost more than half his blood before they decided to stop the treatment, and he died hours later. In the 1500s, Mapuche warrior Galvarino had both his hands cut off as a punishment for defying the Spanish. He returned home, raised an army, and fought the Spanish with blades tied to the stubs of his hands. Alexander Litvinenko was a former Russian spy who heavily criticized Vladimir Putin. In 2006, he was quickly rushed to the hospital after being poisoned with a cup of tea in a London hotel. Working with British detectives as he lay dying, he was able to trace the lethal substance to a former comrade in the Russian Secret Service and said his name just moments before dying, thus solving his own murder case. Stool drains are literally powerful enough to suck your organs right out of your body, and it's one of the grisliest ways in which people have died. In 1962, a Cuban boxer named Benny Paret made fun of his opponent Emil Griffith for being a homosexual. Griffith ended up beating Paret so badly that he fell into a coma and died 10 days after the fight. In the 1920s, not much was known about the effects of radium, so when a group of women were paid to use glow-in-the-dark radioactive paint, they were told that it was completely harmless. But after years of licking the tips of their paintbrushes while using this radium-based paint, the devastating effects eventually became obvious. Many of these women developed a condition known as radium jaw, which would cause horrible tumors around the mouth, and some of their jaws would literally fall off. Here's a 1990 photo of murderer Dalton Prejean with his son in prison, shortly before he was executed via electric chair for killing a state trooper. 12 years later, that same son, Dalton Prejean Jr., was convicted of the 2001 death of a 14-month-old baby. He's currently serving a 60-year sentence in the same prison that his father was executed in. Actress Tina Fey received her chin scar at the age of 5 when a stranger randomly entered her front yard while she was playing and slashed her across the face. The man was never identified nor seen again. A python from Australia became addicted to meth after living in a drug lab for several years. Police busted the operation before sending the snake to rehab for 7 months. In Japan, women are traditionally banned from entering a sumo ring under any circumstances. This tradition is so strictly imposed that in 2018, 2 women were forced to leave the ring, even though they were performing CPR on a mayor who had collapsed inside. Just months before he tragically passed away from a sudden brain aneurysm, Mythbuster Grant Imahara built a fully animatronic Baby Yoda. After spending 3 months of his personal time designing and programming the robot, he planned on bringing it to hospitals to cheer up sick kids. In 2019, an Indian boy named Binod Pod was struck by lightning but miraculously survived. However, local villagers opted to treat his injuries by burying him in cow dung instead of taking him to the hospital, resulting in his death from suffocation. The Iroquois Theater Fire is the worst theater fire to have occurred in the U.S., resulting in 602 deaths and over 250 injuries. Despite being billed as absolutely fireproof, the building broke multiple safety codes that contributed to the high death toll. For example, there were several ornamental doors that looked like exits but led to dead ends. More than 200 people died in one such passageway that they thought was an exit. Joaquin Phoenix's older brother River was a much bigger star than Joaquin in the 1990s. But in '93, the 23-year-old died of a heroin overdose while partying with members of the Red Hot Chili Peppers at Johnny Depp's nightclub on Halloween. Joaquin was the one who found River and called 911 for help, but it was too late. An award-winning middle schooler science fair project showed that on average, 70% of the ice found at fast food restaurants is dirtier than toilet water. In 1955, John Graham hated his mother so much that he hid 25 sticks of dynamite and a timed detonator in her suitcase before her flight. It was one of the first ever attacks of a commercial flight, and all 44 people on board were killed. In 2016, 23-year-old Colin Scott was trying to feel the temperature of a Yellowstone hot spring when he suddenly slipped and fell in. When his body was found floating later that day, the water temperature was measured to be right around boiling point. Emergency services were unable to retrieve Scott's body until the next day, by which point it was completely dissolved, leaving nothing but his wallet and flip-flops. In 1987, actor Sean Penn spent 60 days in prison for reckless driving and assaulting someone on the set of the film Colors. During his imprisonment, a guard delivered a note to him from fellow inmate serial killer Richard Ramirez. In the note, Ramirez asked for Penn's autograph and said that he should assault the same person again. Penn responded with his own note saying that he hoped that Richard would be executed as soon as possible. And the serial killer didn't write back. In 2017, this Rohingya Muslim man carried his elderly and immobile parents in baskets to escape Burma's death squads. He carried them for over 100 miles in his bare feet before safely reaching Bangladesh 7 days later. Many consider Brazilian serial killer Pedro Rodrigues to be the perfect psychopath because of who he chose to murder. Starting at the age of 14, he's killed over 70 people in total, specifically targeting drug dealers, murderers, and rapists. He spent 42 years in prison before being released in 2018 on good behavior, and now he's a YouTuber. These are some morbid facts about atomic bombs. During a test in 1951, an atomic bomb cameraman accidentally ripped off his safety goggles a few seconds before the bomb exploded. He immediately covered his eyes with his hands, and when the bomb detonated, he saw the bones of his hands through his closed eyelids just like an X-ray. The Soviets' Tsar Bomba was the largest bomb ever set off by far. It was 3,500 times stronger than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima and sent shockwaves that traveled around the Earth 3 times. In 1961, the U.S. Air Force accidentally dropped 2 nuclear bombs on North Carolina, each 250 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, but luckily neither of them exploded. This map shows how far the radiation could have spread if one of them detonated. Not to mention in 1958, the Air Force dropped a 7,600-pound H-bomb in Savannah, Georgia that remains unfound to this day. In 1964, the U.S. Army performed an experiment to see if 3 young physics students could design an atomic bomb. They had no specific knowledge of nuclear weapons and were only given access to publicly available documents. Within 3 years, they succeeded.